What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 157. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011. You can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011 every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can join the chat and the discussion over there if you'd like to, but if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video in MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, if you want to support us and help out the podcast any way you can, reviews, comments, shares, it all helps out. It may seem small, but it does help the channel grow. So whatever you can do is very much appreciated. Today, we're back from our hiatus, our holiday break. Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to 2023. You're living in the future now. We got quite a bit to chat about. You might have noticed we missed last week's episode. I didn't get a chance to record. I was initially going to with this topic and kind of had more of a, I guess, negative mindset or, negative mindset, down mindset on what I was going to talk about. And it was just going to be, honestly just how I was feeling about some things. But towards the end of the break, I was feeling a bit better about some stuff. So I thought that would be a better way to kind of reflect or do the topic. So we're going to be doing that today along with 3 other topics. So maybe a long one. Hopefully you're ready for that. Or they'll be short and sweet. We'll have to see. So to kick off today's podcast, or this episode's podcast, we're going to be talking about the new year. What do I want to achieve in the new year? Just like everybody's doing. What are your New Year's resolutions? What are your goals? New year, new me. Not doing that exactly, but want to talk about the new year and then kind of reflect a little bit on at least the end of 2022, what I was kind of going through, and it's, I guess, still going through. So let's start with that, if we were going to start at least on the down slope and then kind of build up towards the end of the topic or as we go. So let's just address it. December, not particularly a great month, I would say, in my books. Nothing terrible happened, thank goodness. But it was just a very negative month in terms of, I guess you could say, mental health or just how I was feeling. Just a lot of things going on, or at least I would think are going on. Maybe just like I was overthinking stuff, or kind of emotions were running wild, and I didn't feel great. Didn't feel like a holiday mood, didn't feel like we're building to anything that like was looking forward to, and it just felt down. And this was in a lot of different avenues. Once again, I think it was just a lot of me overthinking things, or you have a thought of one thing and then it leads to this whole other path of nonsense, stupidity, anxiety, stress, whatever you want to call it. And it wasn't great. Clearly. So leading towards the end of the month, it didn't feel like that holiday time, and I just was not happy with things. Kind of was shutting people down, not really wanting to connect to people, almost burning down some bridges in multiple avenues, and thank God that did not happen, and I'm very fortunate and glad for those bridges to still be there and that support system to still be there. But yeah, it just wasn't good. So towards the end of the month, we took the break. Obviously, we wanted to, try and rest up, try and relax, especially with the holidays. Obviously, everybody's doing their own thing. So it wasn't going to be a good thing to, okay, let's push forward and keep streaming during that time or whatever. So I was supposed to go on a trip over this break, and I decided not to. I did not think it was going to be the right move for, 1, myself, and 2, for everyone else. I just thought I was going to be too negative in the situation and just cause more bad than good, I guess, in that situation. So as for holidays this year, felt very off. 1, obviously not being in that mindset of, it's the holiday season, but, it was alone. It was a seclusion. And I'm not, don't take this as I'm blaming anybody. I did it to myself. And I felt it was the right thing to do, because whether it was going on the trip and spending time with, the family over there, or if it was staying home and spending time with family here, I just thought I would be a whole bundle of negativity and just I would bring everybody down. It wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be a healthy time for anybody. So the feelings I've been feeling or were feeling during December was just a lot of stress of not being able to do what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I myself was being productive in certain avenues, and that was really getting me down. And I don't know. I talked about it in a few podcasts ago when we came back from our summer break. Just once again, the overthinking everything, and just there's no barrier for patience. So small things just for some reason set me off, and it's dumb things. It's like, oh, so and so is complaining about this, or this thing's not going the way it should, and then I just get angry. And I know from a rational standpoint, you shouldn't be getting angry at these things. Why are you getting angry? And then it's the whole argument of like it just keeps escalating because I'm like angry at that, then angry at myself for being angry, and then it's the whole back and forth, and it builds and builds and builds. So I thought, best case scenario, I should just cut everything out and not throw that at anybody, whether because I was feeling that way or not, or doing something without intending it to ruin a relationship or, cause any harm or malice, like, because that's not what I actually want. It's just stupidly how I would have acted or reacted to something. So anyways, I thought seclusion was the best route, and it sucked because that's not, at least usually around this time of year, that's not how it should be, right? You should be hanging out with your family or your friends, loved ones, whoever you do celebrate with or spend that time with, and it should be a positive time. I know this holidays can be stressful for a whole nother bag of reasons, but ideally the messaging or the theming of this time of year, positive, right? So anyway, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, I feel. So decided seclusion, and I decided I'm going to try and reset myself and get back to a position of where I feel myself, I'm heading in a positive direction. Things are going the way that I want them to. So what did I do during the break? Well, as we'll talk about in future podcasts, there were some fun things I did, surprisingly enough, or at least things I did to kind of reset the, how do I want to phrase it or say this? The things I did for fun to relax. I guess that's just one way to put it. So I did those things, played some games, watched some movies, relaxed, slept in, those kind of things. And then on the other side of the coin, I really tried to hunker down and work on myself and things that I felt like I had slacked on or fell behind on this past year, of things like projects I wanted to work on or things I said I would do or whatever it is. And granted, the list was a lot, as I tend to do with just anything. It's just like, it's task after task after task after task. And while I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing, it's a good thing to have those things that you want to do. It's also a bad thing because then you never feel accomplished. And I wrote everything down, and I will say, obviously, we did not get everything done on that list, but it felt productive and a positive enough experience that by the end of the holiday break, I feel like I'm in a much better place right now. And circling back to the relationship standpoint of like, I'm very happy to have those support systems. I feel like those are back on track and back in a positive light. It was a little bit rough with some conversations, regardless of the party. But I think in the end it worked out, and I think now I feel in a better place than I did with them. a lot of laughs being shared, a lot of good, healthy conversations being had from every angle, and I'm very fortunate to have that. So through those, I feel way more relaxed. I do not think I'm 100%, for sure. Definitely not. It's not just going to, be a flick of a switch and everything's back to normal, back to, the standard I guess I want myself to be at. I realize there's still a lot that I need to do, both internally and then things I could do, I guess, in my day-to-day routine to improve that or make it better, from a mental standpoint, a physical standpoint, spiritual standpoint, whatever angle you would like to take it at. There's still a lot to do, and I'm looking forward to trying to keep that positive change going as we progress. Towards the end of the trip, I felt a little bit of guilty because, once again, I had not completed everything on the list. I think I've found a healthy way to kind of remind myself, like, just mentally, that check of, like, it's a process. Once again, it's not going to be a night and day difference or flick a switch and everything's better. Be patient with yourself and keep it up. That steady progress over time will help things, and not just let's change everything. So I think having a healthy conversation with myself in that aspect, I was able to do that later on in the vacation time and kind of keep myself in a balance. So I think maintaining that was a good change and a good thing to kind of follow up on. I've talked about it numerous times outside of podcasts and off a stream of, like, just a exercise routine. While I haven't started anything yet, I think I'll be trying to start something this week, whether it's just going for, doing more of a walk, or I've humored the idea of Taekwondo and going back to martial arts. Maybe that would help with the patience thing and the anger is actually physically hitting stuff. Because you can't do that, regularly, or at least that outlet's not there. But we'll see on that, in that regard, how that goes. And then, yeah, just it's been a lot more positive interactions, I feel, since having those harder conversations with Lady, with my parents, with some friends, of just, like, reaffirming their support when it didn't feel like it was there. Not because they were doing anything wrong. It was just my processing of it, I guess you could say. And how I was overthinking things or how I was feeling. So, yeah, conversations and interactions with them over the break, while I may not have fully delved into it with all of them, definitely felt in a better direction. And this weekend, for example, we had a family gathering, and I think that went very, very well. There were still a few times where, once again, I recognize this is a process. I felt I had reached that level of patience once again, but I think for the most part I was able to wrangle it in. There's still areas to improve on, for sure, or it could have been better, but as for a first social gathering, I guess, since hitting what I would say this low, I think it went overall well. Still a lot of work to do, and work I hope to continue going into 23. So what do I want to try and achieve this year? I guess obviously still overall feel better and back to a position where I feel like I'm myself, whether it's on camera, off camera, whatever it may be, from a stress level, a perspective level, positivity level, whatever it is, getting back to where I think I should be. And then a workflow that works for me. We talked about the schedule of stream numerous times. Keeping a routine with that. I like routines. I think that's just how I am more productive, or can be more positive with certain things, is just having a set schedule, or at least, like, those things to kind of expect or plan for, however you want to phrase it. Getting back into those things, whether it's stream or it's a workflow for side projects, of just like, okay, this is a set time to work on it. And then me, myself, also getting back to being self-sufficient and being diligent with maintaining that. I will admit, over these past years, it's been very lax in that regard, where it's good to be flexible and know, like, hey, this is not the time to work on it, or this is, recognize that you need to rest, you need to relax. That's absolutely important. But I feel like I maybe have went a step too far, and in some regards, I didn't hold myself accountable enough. So it's finding that balance of, like, realizing, hey, I need a break, or that mental space, rest, whatever it is. Acknowledge that, take that, because once again, very important, as a lot of people, at least in the content space, I've noticed, have kind of reached that point. So realizing that, but then also still being positive and at least working on things that, I want to work on, or keep saying I'm going to work on. And I guess this is kind of circling back to that other podcast where I said, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then we got to a worse point. It's finding the balance there. So, 23, I just want to reset back to where I feel normal, quote unquote. And right now, I feel in a positive mindset that we are heading that direction. Once again, there's still a lot to do, as once again, I just said I felt certain ways recently, but I feel calmer and more positive that I'll be able to take those steps than, say, a few weeks ago, which is good. Looking forward to a lot of things this year. As we talked about last podcast that did air, we have the Disney trip coming up. I'm very excited for that and sharing that experience with, my family that is going. I'm looking forward to getting back into the stream routine. Podcasts, for the most part, have been regularly scheduled, except for the, few weeks here and there. Looking forward to keeping up that routine, the stream routine, getting back to normal. I'm looking forward to that. So there's no big, I would say, New Year's resolutions per se, from like, oh, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to start reading, or blah, 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 whatever. Those are all great. And I hope everybody who set those goals for themselves, obviously succeeds in those things. And I've already seen some people from the previous year, like goals they set for themselves, have done fantastic. Like, shout out to hopefully Matt from Hopefully Awesome, losing, weight and doing his exercise goal routine. Huge step for him, or at least achievement for him. That's the term I want. Congrats to him and the others that I've seen make those positive changes for themselves. I hope everybody who has set those goals during this time achieves those, big or small. But yeah, no, I guess, set things there, because listening back to last year's episode around this time frame, like, none of those things were achieved that I set, or at least I don't feel that they were achieved. And it sucks listening back to and being like, oof, yeah, you didn't do any of those. However, I understand, it's, once again, it's that recall, or that, what's the term? Reminding myself it's a process. It's not just going to magically poof and change. So, it's early. There's no, the end time frame isn't tomorrow. It's gonna happen over time. Just be patient with yourself. Still make those strides in positivity and work towards those goals, but realize that, when you get to a point, stop. Don't get to the breaking point like I got to, where everything almost turned into flames, and then I would have been way worse off without things in my life that are important. So, yeah. Okay. Before we go any farther, let's all take a second of clarity before we move into topic 2, and just breathe. Everybody ready? Okay, topic 2. Good break. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Topic 2. So let's talk about the positive stuff that we did over this break. Boy, howdy. Man, vacations are great, but vacations suck when they get to the end and you're like, oh shit, tomorrow is the last day. But at the beginning, they're really good and they go really slow. And how did I spend my time during the Christmas break, the New Year's break, during that slow time? I decided to watch some movies. I decided to catch up on my HBO Max watch list. Because why not? Because I create all these queues on these subscription services, and then do I watch those things? No. But I did on this vacation, excuse me. I decided to watch 3 DC films that were on my queue. I watched Black Adam, that just came out in theaters and now is on the streaming service, not an ad. I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League Director's Cut. And I watched the Injustice animated movie. Okie dokie. Strap in. So, let's start with Black Adam. Black Adam was a movie I kept saying, oh, I'm going to see in theaters. I'm going to see it. You know, I'm not the biggest DC fan. I enjoy The Rock's work. Figured I'll go see it. It's a superhero movie. I'll enjoy it. I'll get a kick out of it. Never ended up going seeing it. Just whether it was mental attitude or just being like, I don't want to go. Decided to watch it over the break. And, to my surprise, pretty good. I had very low expectations going in this movie. Not that I was expecting it to be bad or anything. Just not really any excitement or anything like that. If you're out of the loop, the whole DC film franchise, as of right now, is kind of in this weird flux of redoing everything, restructuring, replanning, all this jazz. So the whole DC continuity of movies is essentially scrapped. They are still planning on releasing some films just because they're far in production, like Blue Beetle next year, Shazam 2. I think Aquaman 2 is still coming out, and then maybe Flash Time movie. I don't remember what they're calling it. But those are still coming out, but then on the headquarters side, they went through this merger with Discovery. So Warner Brothers Discovery are now together. And they have scrapped whatever they have built with the Snyderverse, or that at least continuity of stories. So your Superman, don't remember the name of that title. Man of Steel. Man of Steel, your Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman 1 and 2, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam 1, I guess, was technically tied in, but whatever. Scrapping all of it. Scrapping that continuity, and we're starting fresh as we hired James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, along with other films, obviously. He's now head of DC along with another guy, and they're going to be reformatting, replanning everything similar to like an MCU where it's more conjoined, connective tissue, full plan, better organized, whatever you want to call it. So this film, obviously was produced before all these things happened and released just at the start of it. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, in terms of long term. Like, you're not going to get probably a Black Adam 2 where this is going to have connective tissue, whatever. So it's just a standalone, which is good. Those are great too, standalone films. You don't have to watch, like the Avengers, 21 movies in advance, and then you know how to play Endgame or whatever. So anyways, sorry, rant. Black Adam, decided to watch that. It was great. Interesting take they decided to take on the superhero. Now, I don't know much about Black Adam. My knowledge of Black Adam mainly comes from the Injustice video games and knowing he's an anti-hero, knowing he shares similar power sets from Shazam, still, activates his powers through the same word, the lightning powers, etc. I know he was kind of a bad guy and just emperor over Kahndaq, I believe is his country, and just was kind of mean and angry all the time. That's all I knew about him. The way they told the story here is they kind of made him the anti-hero, and I think it worked. You get this whole backstory, which in the trailers of the movie, they explain how he's a slave, and his son, gets killed, and then he asks or wants to get revenge and is granted the power to get revenge for his son, for his family, which was murdered. Okay, great. That's how we go with the trailers, right? When they go into the film, his origin story changes like 3 times. And you're like, wait, hold on a minute. What do you mean his origin changed 3 times? In actuality, it doesn't, but it's everybody's understanding of the story. Excuse me. And then at the end, he actually tells everybody what's up. So you're presented at the beginning of the movie where it's this boy and his community is enslaved by these people looking for, I do not remember the material, but this material that can create this crown that has great power for the king. So the slaves are all doing that. He manages to find some, and the son essentially, tries to start a rebellion against this leading group. The son rallies his people and, puts up a symbol, some kind of triangle DDP thing, to, let his people know, united, rally, whatever. He's about to get executed. The son poofs away and is spared by the gods of something. Let's see if I can find it in the Wikipedia real quick. Council of Wizards. There we go. We're just going to call them that. Same wizards that we saw in the Shazam movie with Zachary Levi. So we got some continuity there. They give him the power of the Shazam so he can freeze people, all this jazz. Great. Kid gets superpowers. So we think, or we are told as the audience, that boy is Black Adam. Right? Okay. So we're told this. He frees the people, becomes the savior, and then he's put in this tombstone or put in this grave until he's called upon again. Later on, you learn that something else happens. He didn't actually save the city. The fight between him and the king blew up the city, and then he went away. But in actuality, the son became the superhero. Son does everything right and is champion of his people and is helping them out. He goes to his dad. His dad is dying? ? Something's wrong with his dad. He passes over the powers to his dad. Then he gets shot with an arrow in the back by the opposing faction, dies, and then his dad goes into rage mode with his new powers and then fights the king, blows up the city, blah, blah, blah. So you're like, oh, okay. Now that makes a little bit more sense because Black Adam, once again, from my knowledge, not supposed to be a good guy. So it makes sense he's doing this, obviously, for his own righteous reasons of his family. That's good. But did not maybe go about it the right way where it's just kill, 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 die, 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 etc., etc. So, interesting way they played out his origin story there. Sorry, we're going spoilers in case you didn't realize that. My bad. So, when he is awoken in the present day, he's kind of a dick. He's very ruthless. He just murders everybody who's threatening him or opposing him. He does look out for some researchers that do revive him and bring him back to life. And I will say those characters are great. It's a brother and sister group and then the son of the daughter, or sister, excuse me. So it's the 3 of them. And the brother's a hilarious, just comedy role. And then she's the serious one. And the son is kind of like the boy looking up to Black Adam. You're supposed to be this hero. You're supposed to be this symbol. And kind of idolizes superheroes. You can see it in his room. He's got all these comics and posters and whatever. But unfortunately, no superheroes really assist him and his people. So that's why he's putting all of his eggs in his basket for Black Adam and wants him to be the savior that the other heroes will not be for him and his people, because they have been in this flux of being under control from other colonizers. I think that's the correct term. And people not enslaving them, but just ruling over them. So Adam gets revived, causes this chaos of at least, defending himself against these attackers. And this kind of triggers, for some reason, Amanda Waller, which is another connective tissue, who's not the ruler, but the leader of Suicide Squad. Now, if you know Suicide Squad, or the Suicide Squad, if you want to do the second one that was like a rehash or a redo, they're also criminals that are like just used for good. Like they plant a bomb in their neck or head, and they're out, like they're like special forces. They're put out on a task to help and do positive things, and then if the criminals don't work with them, they pull the trigger and blow them up. So it's like, all right, well, at least it was a bad guy that died, kind of thing. So anyways, somehow she gets contacted, and then she contacts or recruits the Justice Society, which is kind of like sidebar Justice League, where we get Hawkman, who's the leader, Dr. Fate, who is like your retiree call back into action, and then we get two young guns. We get Cyclone and we get Atom Smasher. I will say, these four were fantastic. Really cool to see these guys in the film. As someone who doesn't know a lot about DC lore, growing up with the cartoons and stuff like that, knew the characters, but only having, I guess, kind of an auxiliary or a little bit of a preliminary knowledge of these characters before, it's one of those experiences where it's cool to see it on the big screen, similar to a Justice League, regardless of what you think of that movie specifically. It was cool to experience that and see these characters brought to this kind of stage. I think Hawkman, just seeing him butt heads with Black Adam in their differing ideals and like how things are done and carried out, was great. Dr. Fate was amazing. I think it was Pierce Brosnan. Let me see if I'm right there. Yes, Pierce Brosnan was Dr. Fate. He was really cool. He's got a lot of very similarities to Doctor Strange on the Marvel side of things. So a lot of cool effects and just displays of his power there. And then the two recruits, kids, with Cyclone / Red Tornado. Oh, she's the granddaughter of Red Tornado. Okay, they said the name, and I was like, I thought that was a guy. But she was great. And then you had the goofy kind of side of it with the younger recruits with Atom Smasher, who was another like second generation or third generation hero. And just seeing like he's still kind of not learning to control it, but he's learning the on the field kind of stuff, like how to be cognizant of what he's doing, I guess. So I thought all the heroes, the five of them from Black Adam to the Justice Society, I thought they were all cool. The story itself, I thought played out very, very well, and was interesting and held my interest the entire time. I will say one small thing, and I guess this kind of will also tie into my Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Super speed is an interesting power, right? It's cool to see how they have messed with it with films, whether it's from the Flash side of things over to the Marvel side of things with the X-Men films and Quicksilver, whatever. We've seen the good side of it and we've seen the bad side of it. How does it work? Because Wonder Woman can use super speed or is really fast, and then also Black Adam here can be really fast. But then there's other times where they're not really fast, and it's like, how did you get hit? Is it like a reactionary thing where they're getting the jump on people, and that's where like a quick reflex, how you can catch things really quick? Is that how you're able to move fast? But then these other times you're not, because either maybe you're tired or I don't know. I will say that was a little weird from time to time here, where Black Adam was either fast all the time or just wasn't. And I will say slow-mo, bro, they love their slow-mo in these movies. There's a lot of times where, and maybe it was more the Justice League side of things, where it was very stop, go, stops, go, stop, go. And I guess we'll just transfer over to the Justice League movie. So closing thoughts on Black Adam. Even though I didn't continue on the story, I just kind of did the origin story spoiler. So hey, there's that. Really enjoyed Black Adam. Thought the story was good. Not going to be groundbreaking, amazing. But it was a fun time. And especially being a standalone movie now with the whole continuity thing and the, good time. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. So let's talk about Justice League. Snyder Cut. Why the hell did I watch this? 4-hour movie. Yeah, I didn't misspeak. 4 hours. Snyder did not want a lot of that stuff cut from his film. Oh boy. So, theatrical release of Justice League came out 2015, 2016 maybe. I don't know. I guess I could look it up because I'm right here. And then the Snyder Cut came out in over the pandemic. So 2020-ish. So a lot of things were added back into this film over on HBO Max. 2017 was original Justice League. So a lot of things were added back in that Snyder wanted in there. And what did that include? So included more backstory for certain characters like your Cyborg, a little bit more for Flash. And then the big area, I guess you could say, that stuff was added was on the villain side of things. So in the original Justice League movie, you had Steppenwolf coming in. There's 3 mother boxes on Earth, and they want to recover those so they can essentially take over the planet and destroy it. So Steppenwolf shows up, causes chaos where these 3 mother boxes are held. One's held in Atlantis. One's held at the place where Wonder Woman's Amazonians are chilling on that island. And then the third one is with Cyborg, because that's how he is revived and gets his powers, if you want to call them powers. He's a robot. So in the original cut, he essentially deals with those 3 parties at their respective times. And then we have the epic conclusion at the end. Justice League reunites, or not reunites, unites, and we fight, right? In this one, we get a whole lot of exposition for Steppenwolf and actually make him a character. While in the original film, it was literally just, here comes big CG monster fights, gets box, goes cause chaos. This one, we understand what is his purpose for being here, which I appreciate. They tried to do this with Cyclops and Flash and give them a little bit more backstory of like, oh, what's their hardships? Why do we care about these heroes? And that, I will say, didn't really work, or didn't really seem relevant. Like, I can understand why it was cut. It helped a little bit, I would say, in Cyborg's case, of like knowing his angsty struggles and why he hates his dad and blah, blah, blah. But it just felt unnecessary. Hence why it was cut in the theatrical version. On the Steppenwolf side of things, you learn that he's trying to redeem himself. He's working for Doomsday, which you actually get to see in the Snyder Cut. And he's working for Doomsday to try and get these planets. And you see more of the fights between the 3 mother box fights. And when I say you get to see a lot, you see a lot. Maybe not in the Atlantis stuff, but boy howdy. When they go to the Wonder Woman area, Themyscira, that's the name of it. We spend a lot of time there in this whole big epic fight. And did it look cool? Sure. But talk about slow-mo. There was a lot of times we used slow-mo where we did not need to use slow-mo. And the action is very back and forth where normal speed. And then we're going to go very slow. And you're going to see every frame of this person diving out of the way, avoiding this bullet. And then we're going back to real speed. And then we're going to go back to this. I hope you held your pee in because you're going to be here for a while. And then we're going to go back to it. Just like, there were so many moments of slow-mo. It's like, this is too much. You need to stop. So, how was the movie experience overall besides these things? It was okay. I enjoyed Justice League seeing it in 2017 for the thing of like I talked to with the Black Adam thing, we're seeing these characters in this different medium of, on the big screen. These characters come to life. And other than that, the movie was mid. Okay, wow, I just used that. Okay, Zoomer. The movie's okay. It's not great. It's not super, and I'm not trying to be Marvel fanboy like, oh, all those movies are great, because you've seen Phase 4 and you know my feelings on Phase 4. Oof. It was okay. And I think the director's cut was kind of on the same bar of it was just okay. And as mentioning it was 4 hours, it felt like 4 hours. And not in the respect of like I was dreading it, because I was late night, I was bored, I was chilling. I, could care less. It just, I felt like I was sitting there longer than I was, and then when I finally checked it, it was like, I'm only an hour in? What? That was a problem. So, is it worth the 4-hour experience? I'd probably say no, unless you're really into DC stuff. Then hey, here you go. Enjoy. It was an interesting experience. I guess you could just wrap it up in a nice, neat bow there. Now, they are very nice, and they split it up into chapters. They don't really give you a forewarning of like in the streaming service of like this is where the cuts are if you wanted to stop and then come back. But if you, I guess, mentally or physically wrote down, oh, okay, we're at part 3, which starts at this timestamp, then you could split it up that way. That might be a more enjoyable viewing experience. Who knows? That is a nice, they did break it up that way, at least in chapters like a book where, okay, there's going to be at least a start and finish to this section. Then we'll move on to the next one, Let's talk about the last chapter. Now, the last chapter is not, surprisingly, your conclusion of the movie, the big fight, the big epic, the good guys win. And you're like, wait a minute, what? No, that was the chapter previous. In the universe that they were building, in the theatrical releases, we got hints of this. So, I don't know if it was Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, or if it was Justice League. But in the theatrical release, we had seen Batman in this like dystopian future where Superman is kind of not a dictator, but he's very like opposite in mindset of what you would say Superman is, where he's very ruthless, aggressive, no nonsense. Well, not that, he's nonsense, and he's more tyrannical than a good guy kind of thing. And so it's Batman in this futuristic world, and it ends up being like this nightmare vision of like, oh, things are going to be bad, whatever. And we get this we get this point where Batman wakes up, sees a vision of the Flash from the future, and the Flash is like, it's about, oh crap, not Martha, because that was the whole gimmick and joke of Batman versus Superman. The moms were both named Martha. Yeah, you had to be there. It's all about Lois Lane. You gotta save Lois, blah, blah, blah. And Batman, being Batman during that time, was like, what? And then Flash was like, I didn't go in the right time. I'm too early. And then all the audience was like, what are you talking about? So this must have been Batman versus Superman. So they tried planting seeds for this bigger story, is what I'm trying to allude to. I know this sounds confusing. Guess what? It's the DC film franchise. It was confusing. So you get this vision of Batman versus Superman of the dark future, and then this warning from Flash. In Justice League, you realize, okay, Superman's dead. Sorry, spoiler there. He died in Batman vs. Superman. And in Justice League, they bring him back to life. Also weird. With the mother box. And Lois is the one that kind of brings him back to Earth. Mentally. Because when he wakes up, he's very not feeling himself. He doesn't know where he's at. He's scared. He's just fighting for his life. Blah. And Lois is the one that kind of ground him and make him realize, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Whatever. So, at the end of the director's cut, they decided, and by they I mean Zack Snyder, decide to continue this like dark alternate universe nightmare future. I'm not sure if they were eventually going to get to this and this was going to be continuity in the actual DCU. Oh, sorry, DCEU, because they were extended universe. If this was going to be canon and then we're going to eventually deal with this because Lois had died or something, like it would have been the repercussions from those actions, whatever. So you get more of this, and it's interesting. I will say it's interesting to see this like parallel universe or this like what if scenario, but also it's very confusing just in its placement of the film. Like it ends and it's all happy and yeah, we saved the day, and then it's this dark, gloomy short essentially, and then it's cliffhanger, and it's like, is this a tease? Is this actually a thing that I should care about? It's exactly that emoji. What? So the story they're trying to tell is it's this dark, path where Superman's tyrannical, but it's Batman with a new group or like ragtag group of heroes trying to take him down. So it's Batman, it's Cyborg, who's all different looking, it's the Flash, who has armor, and then you get Deathstroke, which we got teased at the theatrical cut of Justice League, and you get teased at in the end of this one, where he's going to be a bad guy, and they're going to set him up as the next bad guy, Batman villain, which was cool. Joe Magnolia, whatever his last name is, I apologize. He looked great as the character, and there's a whole Lex Luthor tie in there. The teaser, that was cool, but then you have him in this, and then you get this big reveal of who the last member is. And boy, oh boy, do you guys like Morbius? Because it's Jared Leto as Joker from the original Suicide Squad from 2016. The one they retconned out and redid the other Suicide Squad with. Now, granted, I don't think Snyder was part of that at that time, but he was trying to tie that in. So Jared Leto goes on this whole speech, and he's trying to, irk up Batman and blah, blah, blah. It was just like, what? And I think that's where people are all getting the memes of like, we live in a society. I never recall him saying that, but maybe it's just because I was spaced out at the end of a 4-hour movie that I didn't catch it. Interesting. Now, regardless of what we think of Jared Leto's real life, I thought he did well as the Joker character. I know some people that's a very divided topic. I thought it was cool. So it was cool to see the character here, but it was one of those head-scratching moments of like, all right. But anyways, Joker and Batman getting this whole conversation of the working together now, but then eventually I'm just going to get you or be this pain in your ass. And then Superman like booms in and is like looming threat, and then we get cut to credits. It was interesting. Okay, I like our teases. Don't get me wrong. Marvel's always got their post-credit stuff. Let's see what we're building to the future. We had it with this film too, with Deathstroke and Luthor working together. I like it. This just seemed like too much, I guess. It would have been a lot more interesting. It's like, you reel out your fishing reel and you're trying to bait people and you luring them in, right? This lingered too much, and by the end of it, I was just like, I don't get it. It wasn't like, oh, I want to see that kind of thing. I think it would have been a more compelling or interesting thing. Granted, once again, at the time of them releasing Snyder Cut, Zack was a whole relationship with her. Whatever. It would have just been interesting to have this, like, turn reveal of the last member. It's Joker. He does the whole whatever laugh he does, and then we cut to black, and then we're all left there going, whoa, Joker's in here, blah, 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 whatever. I think that would have been more interesting than this whole 5-minute speech that the two had with each other, and then what was supposed to be, I guess, that cliffhanger moment of Superman booming in, whatever. Didn't really click. So I don't know why I'm rambling on about it, because once again, at the beginning of this topic, I said DC Universe or the Snyderverse, whatever, doesn't even matter now, so I'm just bitching to bitch to the open air and the open ears of all you lovely people. It doesn't matter. It means absolutely nothing. But yes, old man yells at cloud. It doesn't mean anything. It was an interesting... Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Yeah, I practice that all the time in the mirror, the Joker laugh. It just doesn't mean anything. So overall, would I recommend you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League? If you got 4 hours to kill, sure. Go for it. If you really like the DC stuff and you want to see more of these characters put into this medium, like Doomsday looked dope. Yes, sure. You'll get a kick out of it. You'll enjoy it. If you are like meh on these, no, don't watch it. Don't waste your 4 hours. You have a lot of other things you can do in that 4 hours. You can cut that time in half and watch the just original theatrical cut of Justice League if you really want to humor yourself and poke your head into this world. But Snyder Cut, yeah, that was interesting. And then for the last DC movie I decided to watch over this vacation, we'll talk about the Injustice movie. Now, this is an animated movie. Okay, buckle in. This is an animated movie based on the based on the comic, based on the video game. NetherRealm and Warner Brothers worked on Injustice, released Injustice 1 and 2 for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 era. Yes. Amazing stories that they did with these two games here. Absolutely love them. I love what NetherRealm has done with those games, Mortal Kombat franchise, since I picked it up at 9, and we've gone forward from there. Can't recommend those stories highly enough to people. The comics kind of added to it. You got a little bit of more story beforehand. You got some story in between 1 and 2, and I think they've continued it past 2, but don't quote me on that. So all that stuff was essentially telling the same story, but with those additive things of what happened in Universe A compared to Universe B in the first Injustice, with the two timelines coming together, and then Injustice 2 being just following this one universe and seeing how that continued and building on that universe, whatever. So the animated movie, you would think, okay, they're just going to run it back in this different medium, try and get it to a new audience, and go from there. And I get that this is could be a whole separate topic of like, okay, do you, when you make a new medium for a story, do you follow the story point to point, or do you try and make it to your own, and then like this is an homage to the original thing? That's what they did in this animated film. They took the story of Injustice and took it and made it their own thing. And I'm not sure if it worked fully. It was another okay one. It wasn't great. So if you don't know the story of Injustice, spoilers, but this is like the beginning of the game, so I'll just say that. I won't say the whole game stuff. So the whole concept of Injustice is Joker threatens Metropolis. And in order to do this, he causes Superman... He kind of takes Superman out of the equation because obviously Superman is Superman and just can mess with Joker like nobody and just get rid of him immediately, right? And solve most problems. So he gets Superman out of the situation and attempts to destroy Metropolis. And what happens is the rest of the heroes try and stop this bomb at Metropolis, and at the very last second when everything's exploding, it somehow, because superheroes and comics, causes some of the heroes at the explosion and villains to transport to another universe where it's like a continuation of what would have happened if that bomb exploded. In the first Injustice game, you get a continuation of that moment, and the bomb does not go off, and the heroes that are still there are trying to figure out what's going on. and continuing where those heroes and villains transported to in the other universe where the bomb did happen and explode. Now, the thing is here, that's the tipping point, is because the bomb exploded, Lois Lane dies, and Superman goes apeshit and kills the Joker. That's the big, like, turning point cause for the story. So Superman turns evil. That's the whole shtick. So in the games, in the first game, you run these two storylines along these parallel universes and get that crossover, and then game 2 follows the Superman when evil universe and just sticks with that one. In the movie, you don't get this crossover of universes. You just follow the path of Superman turns evil. So we followed the same beginning plot points, but instead of Lois blowing up from the bomb, the way they get rid of Superman is Superman responds to an incident, and it's Scarecrow. And Scarecrow uses his gas on Superman, and Superman believes Doomsday, one of his big baddies, is attacking him. So Doomsday is very similar to Superman. I believe he's not from Krypton, but something. He's really strong. And Superman takes him out to space. He's punching the shit out of him, whatever, beating him up. During that time, Joker tries to blow up the bomb, succeeds, but just prior to that, Batman radios to him because Joker does the whole villain thing where he talks about, oh, this was my plan the whole time, yuck, yuck, yuck. And Batman's like, you've been gassed, Superman. You're not actually fighting whatever you're fighting. Superman snaps out of it, and instead of punching Doomsday all the way into space, he's been actually punching Lois, who's pregnant with his super baby, and he killed her. That causes him to freak out, kill Joker, and then we proceed from there. Oh boy. So, the movie, in some regards, follows at least his rise to power and some of the heroes and villains kind of siding with him. But then brings in other elements of new heroes that weren't even in the game. Like, I believe Plastic Man's in here, and then a bunch of other heroes that I don't really know. They're like B tier, C tier heroes. And they'll get in the altercation, and they'll eventually stop Superman from being this tyrannical guy who's pretty much policing the world of, like, anything you do that is bad, we're going to stop you. And some people are happy about it, some people aren't happy about it because it's very militaristic, or at least like Big Brother's watching kind of deal. And maybe it's just me from, like, comparing it to the games where I was like, it didn't click fully. I think it works. And it's fine as a film. It never felt like at any point bad. It just wasn't what I was expecting, I guess you could say. And once again, alluding back to my question earlier, is like, do you adapt things point to point, or do you try and make it your own thing? I'm kind of on both sides, because if you just adapt it point to point, like, there's nothing special about it, and everything's very predictable because you know exactly how it's going to go. But then you get something like this where it tries to be its own thing, and it's like, didn't really fully deliver in a great way. So, Injustice was fine. I don't know if it was really worth a watch. It was nice that they tried, I guess. If you haven't played through the Injustice games or seen that story all the way through, I think it's worth a watch, because it is this is an interesting story and power dynamic, because obviously Superman is so super powerful and not overpowered, but he's a tough thing to take down, especially from the other heroes' perspective and what their abilities are. So seeing them deal with that and kind of counteract it, I think it's a standalone story. If you didn't know the initial source material, I think it's good. But going from the games to that didn't really deliver. So interesting time. I would, that one's definitely a shorter one. I'd say that was maybe only an hour and a half. So a little bit easier thing to digest. So yeah, caught up on some of the DC movies on the watch list. Was it a good thing? Who's to say? Who knows? But let's move over to topic 3. We're going to talk about DC. Might as well talk about Marvel. Let's talk about a little game called Marvel Snap. So if you don't know what Marvel Snap is, this has been one of those games that's kind of been sweeping the nation as of last year. I'm not sure exactly when the game launched, but I decided to give it a try. It's on mobile platforms, but now has a Steam port, I guess you could say. And essentially what the game is, it is a card collecting strategy game. And the objective is, with your cards, you are trying to, within a 6-turn span, control 2 out of 3 points minimum to win your game. It's an online game. You play against real players across the world, whoever's playing it as well on either platform, and you're trying to outplay them. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Hearthstone, but to be honest, I know literally nothing about Hearthstone, so I can't draw an accurate comparison. So your cards essentially have 2 things. Every card has an energy value, and every card has a power value. Depending on their energy value, that determines if you can play them or not. So as the game progresses, from turn 1 to turn 6, you will get more energy. So for example, turn 1, you have 1 energy. Turn 2, 2 energy, and so on until turn 6. You have to strategize of when to play cards and what point or what location you play them at. So that's your energy level. Your power level is what determines who wins what location. So your card can have a power level of 1, 2. I think my highest right now is a 20. Jesus Christ. And that power all adds together and goes against your opponent's power. Whoever has the more power by the end of the game wins that territory. So 2 out of 3 you're trying to win. If for some reason there is a tie, so maybe each opponent has 1 location fully locked down, and then the third one is a tie, it just goes to pure math. So who had a better advantage or more power collectively than their opponent did, and that will be the person who wins it overall. So sometimes it even comes down to those last minute decisions of like, oh, I actually beat you by 8 while you only overpowered me by 5 here, and that can be the person who wins it all. So along with the energy and the power, each card has, well, most cards have their own abilities. Some will add power and buffs to other cards that you may have played. Some will cause negative effects on your opponents. Some you can re-strategize by moving to other spots later in the game, etc., etc. There's a lot of abilities. I'm not going to go through the full thing. And it's a really interesting game to kind of figure out and strategize how you want to play your cards. Similar to, you know, I'm going to say older styles of card games, but, you know, you got your Magic the Gathering, your Pokemon, your Yu-Gi-Oh! There's obviously all these different strategies for those games of things you want to do to try and beat your opponent. One other thing that makes the game so enticing and so exciting is every game is different. So you make your deck that obviously you think will obviously win, but your strategy may technically change from game to game. And the reason it does is because those 3 locations are revealed progressively throughout the game. So on turn 1, the most left location will be revealed, and this will have certain aspects or gameplay mechanics that will affect the players. So maybe you get extra energy if you have no cards at this location, or you can't play power cards level 1, 2, and 3 at the location. Turn 2, you'll get the second location. Turn 3, you will get the third location. So by adding these random elements of the locations, you kind of have to strategize and plan a little bit extra on top of it. And I think that's what kind of keeps, at least myself, playing, because it's different every time. And it's not just, okay, play this one, then play that one, then go that. And it's just like automatic, if that makes sense. It's very interesting kind of and fresh to go into each game and figure out what you need to do. The game's very, very quick. With the 6 turns, I would say a game maybe takes 3 to 5 minutes, if that, and you could just pump them out. Playing this game over break became very addicting, I will say. I don't feel like the game is pay to win. I know some people had a little bit of backlash over last season's Battle Pass. I mentioned one of my cards is Power 20. I haven't used that card specifically, nor have I run into cards that people play all the time that feel overpowered or like cheap. Like, I'll see a lot of cards often. Like, I'll say one of the more popular ones would be like these counter cards. So like the Guardians of the Galaxy, at least the ones that I've seen so far, so like a Rocket Raccoon, a Mantis, or a Star-Lord are kind of like counter cards. So it's, if I play Star-Lord at a location and my opponent also plays a card at that location, my Star-Lord card is buffed because they played a card there. I'll see a lot of those cards, but I haven't run into any strategies or any cards specifically, and maybe it's just in my ranking playthrough who I'm paired against. I haven't run into any strategies or any cards that feel overpowered or cheap in any aspect, and that's something I appreciate, because a lot of games, especially with whatever you want to call them, season passes, microtransactions, pay to win, nothing feels like a pay to win strategy where if you don't want to give them real world money on top of your initial download, you fall behind. It doesn't feel like that with this game. It feels like, nope, you just play it and use what you got and you can go from there. And it makes it worthwhile to play. It doesn't feel like you're getting left behind. Similar to a Fortnite, where if I buy something in the Battle Pass or in the store, everything being cosmetic, I'm not getting any kind of advantage over any players. So with the card collecting aspect, they give you, I don't know how many cards to start off, but it's enough to make a deck, and the decks are 12 cards in total, and you can rearrange and make however many decks as you want. I don't know if there's a cap. Typically I only play with the one that I like right now, but I have 3 different sets of decks that I have right now, but you can mix and match as much as you want. You can't have repeats of cards. So in the collecting aspect of it, there's different characters that you can collect. So you have your Avengers, you have your Guardians, you have villains, you have X-Men. There's a wide variety of characters that you do have, but on top of that, they also have variants. So they have a lot of different art from different comic artists. But they have different types of cards. So, for example, there's a Hawkeye card, but then there's a Pixel one. There's one that are based on like the chibi animated little short characters that they had during the Secret Wars Run 2. There's more stylized characters from different other comic book artists based on the Ultimate line or whatever it might be. So that's another aspect of the collector. So even if you have multiple of the same card, you can't stack up the same of that card. So it's not like you're going to run into players who are running 8 Mr. Fantastics. So that's nice too, where even if the card is powerful, you're not going to run into multiples of that card. Now, can you get multiples of the cards? Yes, if certain locations make copies of cards or random elements allow you to draw cards, whatever it might be. Those are the only way you're going to see duplicates of cards. So it's nice to at least know that it's not going to be stacked with all of one card that's really, really good. Papa Griffin Chats asks, so what is the collecting dynamic? That is, how do you assemble a deck? So, like I said, you'll start off with so many cards. I'm not sure. I want to say it's at least the 12 to get, obviously, your first initial deck. But the way you collect the cards is interesting. So it's not like Pokemon cards, for example. It's not like a pack that you open and then, oh, you get 5 whatever cards. The way you get the cards, or rather unlock anything, is through a collection level. So, for example, every card has a tier. Now, the tier does not affect power level, does not affect energy level, does not affect how powerful the card is. It is simply a cosmetic, how the card appears, how it looks when you're playing it. Every card starts off as a, I guess, common. It's common, uncommon, rare, legendary, ultra, and then I believe it's infinity. And what this does is it changes the appearance of the cards. So uncommon is just like a flat playing card. Uncommon, it becomes borderless, and the art goes outside of the rectangular shape of the card. On rare, it becomes animated, I believe. Let me see if I can find one. I think so. Yeah, it's animated. And then the fourth one is like dynamic effects, and then ultra. Like, there's different effects the cards essentially get in their appearance. With you upgrading these cards, your collection level will go up. And as you start earlier, pretty much every level of rarity that you improve is a pip up this bar. So uncommon to common will be 1 pip. Common to rare will be 2 pips, so on and so forth. So if you're getting to the highest rarity of cards, you can get like 6 to 8 pips up. And these get you random cards. So it can get you a random card every so many, and then it also can get you these units to upgrade your cards. So how do you upgrade your cards? Well, this is kind of where the randomness kind of comes into play. So if you play cards, you are more likely going to get things to upgrade them. So for example, I use a Carnage card from the Spider-Man comics a lot. So he's upgraded to, I believe, the Ultra level. And then I have a Mr. Fantastic who's at like the Infinity level or whatever. The more you use those cards, you're more likely to get resources to upgrade those cards. There's 2 resources that go into upgrading those cards. There's credits, which you get from essentially just playing the game. Different missions, quote unquote, sorry for audio listeners, which are just like play X amount of games, play 10 power 2 cards, win a location with 1 card, win a location with a power of 20. Similar to any battle pass that has weekly challenges, things like that. Marvel Snap does the same thing. You have your battle pass challenges, which can help you get the battle pass if you decide to get the battle pass or just do the free stuff. You can get more cards or more boosters there. If you don't do the battle pass, then your missions, like everybody gets 6, I don't know if they're daily missions, but 6 missions that you can do, and then your seasonal ones, which as of this season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 chapters, and those will unlock weekly. Each chapter has 7 challenges that you can do. So by doing these challenges, you can get the credits to use as a resource to upgrade those cards. For the credits, that's how you get those. And then for the boosters, each is dependent on their specific card. So if I want to upgrade my Squirrel Girl, I need specific boosters for her. And that's random. If you use the cards, it's more likely to give you the chance to get her boosters. Depending on what rarity you're trying to upgrade, will determine the amount of boosters and credits that you will need. So if you're trying to upgrade just a common card to an uncommon, I think it's like 25 credits and 5 boosters. For my Squirrel Girl right now, who's at a legendary, to get her to ultra, I need 400 credits and I need 40 of her boosters. So you may collect some over time, but may not get all of the resources you need specifically in that game to get her to the next level or next rarity, if that makes sense. Where do I want to? Okay. Stuff you can buy. If you want to, there's other resources like gold, which you can get from the battle pass. You can use the gold essentially just pretty much to buy different variants of different cards. So just essentially changing the artwork if you want to do that. Or if you want to buy more credits to upgrade your cards, you can do that as well. If you want to buy gold with real world money, you can do that, but you certainly do not have to, as you collect that from the battle pass and from your missions. So the option is there if you want to either A, support the developers, as you should, or B, just buy stuff for yourself. The option is there to do that, to get those resources with real world money if you want to upgrade. But once again, it does not change or affect the power levels of each card. It's all cosmetic, which I really appreciate because it keeps the experience fair and balanced and doesn't create this giant player gap of like, oh, well, they spent hundreds of dollars on this game. Of course, they're just going to wipe the floor with me because they have all the best cards. At least, once again, from my playing of it since, this break, this gap, whatever you want to call it, I haven't run into a point where I'm like, oh, it's just another freaking X hero or X villain. God, I hate playing against those. It really comes down to just the strategy of it. And even in a loss, I never feel frustrated. It sometimes just comes down to the simple thing of like, oh, yep, they played that card, which adds that. Didn't even think they would play that. My counter wasn't strong enough, what I played or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's just been a fun experience overall. So like I said, it is on mobile platforms, so you can play on there, or it is on Steam right now. I don't know if they plan on bringing it to other platforms, but it's been a fun experience to jump into and dive into the gameplay. I know a lot of people were talking about it over the past year that were really enjoying it and spending a lot of time into it, so it's been fun to try out and play. Does it give you a roster or list of possible cards so you know what you might want to save for? Or if you randomly got a Thor, you know I need Loki, Cap, etc. So from my understanding, I don't know if it lists them off by name, but if you go into your collection, there is a filter that you can bring up to show you what you don't have. So as I load the game up right now, so if I go into my collection, I go into filter, I can show unowned cards. So if I've seen them, it will show me their character art. So for example, there's a Wasp character here. I've seen her either played from an opponent, or I was randomly drawn that card, and it shows that. As for cards I've never seen, if I click on it, all it does is show an outline or a silhouette of those characters. So yes and no, as of like, does it give you a full roster? Right now with the filter I have up of seeing everything, at least I know all the cards available to me, yes. But they're only outlines essentially of what the cards are available. As for the variations, that, as far as I know, they do not show you. So even like a card that I bring up like Ant-Man, I can't cycle through and see how many variations that he has. So that's a little bit of a downer. Personally, like a card type that I really want to strive to and trying to collect is, I kind of alluded to the chibi art guys. So I have one for Star-Lord That's one of the comic artists art I just really enjoy, because it's goofy to see those characters kind of in this childlike aesthetic. So I don't know if there's a way where you can see what variations each card does have in terms of its art style. In going to the shop, every day they will give you 6 variations of a card that you do own, that if you want to buy with the gold, which is the real world currency, you can buy that variation. They do tend to be expensive. So for example, the cheapest ones I have in my 6 right now are 700 gold. So if I scroll down, 700 gold is $10. So yeah, it can get a little egregious, I guess, if you wanted to just get the variations you want. But you don't have to, clearly. So each day they will give you 6 variants of cards that you do own, and that will refresh. I haven't reached a point where I feel like I kind of get stagnant with like getting new cards. As I mentioned with the collection level and those pips, it does get harder as you progress. So for example, I'm at a collection level of 255. I don't know if there's a max or what the max is. You can just scroll and there's a bunch. And right now, in between collection levels are 4 pips. So I need to upgrade a card 4 times. So whether it's just a common to uncommon, which is 1, or uncommon to rare, which is worth 2, every 4, I will either get 10 boosters for a random card, a mystery card, which is a new card or a variant of a card that I own, I think. Yes. Or a 50 credits. So something else I can use to upgrade my cards. I didn't reach the 4 pips in between until I reached a collection level of 214. So there's a decent chunk where it's only 2 steps in between your next reward. So you kind of, unlock things quick. So once you kind of get later in the game, it does slow down. But as long as you are playing, maybe give it a little bit of time in between and upgrading your cards, you'll be constantly getting stuff. With the season pass, obviously there's additional things you can get if you decide to do the battle pass. It's $10 to the battle pass, so you can get mystery variants from there. There's more boosters available. They usually have 3 additional cards in there, which this season's a little lacking, I'm not going to lie. But there are rewards available to you in those avenues if you want. I will say something about the credits. Every day, similar to the variants, which you can purchase, the credits, if you want to, you can also purchase credits with the real world money. But every, 6 hours or so, there are free credits that you can redeem. It's only 50, but still, it's nice. It's a little bit like, oh, hey, something I can use to upgrade from there. So once you get to the higher levels of upgrading cards, it really depends too of like how you want to strategize. Of like, okay, well, I could upgrade 3 cards that go to common to uncommon, or do I want to save up and try and get an ultra to a legendary? If you want to think about it that way, really depends on what you want to do. So how did I get the Power 20 card randomly? So the last season, so when I started playing, it was the last week of the season pass, battle pass, whatever you want to call it. And I had put quite a few hours into the game. I was like, yep, I am really enjoying it. I decided to get the battle pass. So with that battle pass, the 3 cards were Silver Surfer. Ooh, what was the second one? Oh, Silver Surfer, the Collector, and then the Power 20 card, which is called the Infinite. I don't know. So he's a 6 energy, and he's worth 20 power. However, his card gimmick is if you played a card last turn, you can't play this. So he has a positive and a negative. Obviously, it's great. 20 power. Holy shit. That's great. But you have to, make sure you essentially skip your own turn last turn and not play something, which can be detrimental in some of these things because they're very back and forth. So that one was a season pass one. I haven't seen anybody use that, so I don't feel like that's OP. From a starting standpoint, I think my highest power card was a 8 or a 9. Yeah. So you get a variety. And that's something you got to kind of strategize too with, is like, if you just load your deck with high power cards, usually the power kind of goes with their energy level. You're not going to get like a 1 energy card that's worth 10 power. No, I think as of my hand right now, or at least my collection, the highest 1 power I have is a 3. 1 energy. The highest power is a 3. And then, the highest power I have is 20, but it costs 6. And then there's a 12 and a 6 energy, and a 9 and a 6 energy. Like, it depends. There are certain strategies that you can use to make more cards more powerful. So, for example, I mentioned the Star-Lord card earlier, which is more of that counter card. His base power is a 2. If and only if a player plays on the same location I do that turn, his power turns from a 2 to a 5. If they don't play opposite of me, he stays at that 2. Carnage, which is a card that I play, like I said, a lot, base 2. But what he does is, if when I play him, all the other cards in that location that I own, he destroys. Every card he destroys, he gets plus 2 power. So if there's 3 other cards at that location, max I can play is 4, he'll get up to an 8. And then that frees up other spaces that I can play more cards. So you kind of have to figure out what strategy works best for you and how you can build up that power yourself. Sorry if you said but the levels, common up to infinite, do they improve power effects, or is it just a graphic? No worries. That's a good question. So no, those will not affect any stats. So, for example, my Mr. Fantastic is at his max level. His stats have stayed the same from uncommon all the way to infinite. He's 3 energy. He's only 2 power. All that does is change the artwork of the cards. So, once again, your common just looks like a playing card, just flat artwork. Uncommon, it loses the borders so the art can escape outside of that border perimeter. 4, I believe, makes it 3D. The next one adds like some animated effects. The one after that makes it a little bit more dynamic or artsy. I don't know. And it goes from there. So no, there is no power benefit to leveling up. It's only the appearance of that collection level. So that's where it kind of maintains its balance from player to player, where it doesn't feel like you're just going to come in and get stomped by somebody. So it's really, I guess, depends on the player of like, is that an experience that you want or find worthy to chase after for, of like, oh, I'm unlocking things by appearance, but not, I'm playing the game, and by putting my time in, I'm getting more powerful. If that's something you want to pursue, then yeah, obviously this may not get you what you want or what you're looking for. So upgrading cards just gets you opportunities to get more cards or credits. In other words, you don't earn anything by standing on what you have. No benefits for winning matches. Yeah, so me upgrading a card changes its appearance and, yes, allows me to work towards getting more resources to either unlock new cards or upgrade the ones that I already have. Yes, it is not going to make me more powerful than person A, person B, person C. We're all on an equal playing field until it comes to strategizing, thinking out how to get more power for the locations in the game itself. I'm not at any point going to walk into a match and that person is going to stand no chance. Now, they may, obviously, with how they plan out strategically, but from a card-to-card standpoint, just by the numbers, it's anybody's game, if that makes sense. I think that makes sense. It all comes down to how the game is played, not just because I have, this gun that never misses and always gets an insta-kill. Like, those kind of pay-to-win situations where I just bought all the best gear and that makes me the best. It's literally go into it, and however you play your cards will determine how the results are. So yeah, since starting playing it, it's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, some of the stuff is a little steep for, like, if you are going to spend money for it. A little rough, so, be smart with that, obviously, But it's been a fun experience, and excited to play more. Excited to see what other variants they do have, because, like I said, it is hard, or at least I haven't found a way to look up what variants they do have. I'm sure there's maybe a website or something like that, but at least from in-game resources, there's not an easy way to see what is available there. So excited to see what we can lock down the road as we continue playing it, and it's been a fun thing. It just, even if you only have 10 to 15 minutes to kill, or just want to play something quick, easy matches in and out, and you're done. And it's just that puzzle aspect that's very interesting, of just strategizing, figuring out what's next, and where to go from there. So yeah, Marvel Snap. Glad I gave it a try, and can definitely see why everybody's been clamoring about it over this past year. Let's move on to topic 4. We are talking about God of War Ragnarok. Now, as of recording, I have platinumed God of War Ragnarok last night. Yeah, literally, right down to the buzzer beater. I just want to talk about my impressions of God of War Ragnarok, its story, things that may have changed from 2018 or that they added to the experience. Some of you guys know that I started streaming this game when it did launch, and unfortunately, just because of things going on, I was not the best at keeping up with that story, and we did not make it through on a stream aspect, but decided to continue playing it off of stream after making it about 13 hours through on there, and continued it to completion over the break and as of now. So I wanted to give you my thoughts on that. Obviously going to stay spoiler free, at least for this beginning section. If at any point you do want to avoid all the spoilers that we're going to go into, because we're probably going to talk, if not everything, definitely the story beats and the things that hit me the hardest with this game, I will give you a fair warning when that does come up, and we are going to be diving into full spoilers, so just a fair warning there. So, God of War Ragnarok, like I mentioned, we streamed for 13 hours over on twitch.tv/Enigma911. Hey, go follow. Streamed it there, had a great time, and afterwards have played a total, to get platinum, 53 hours. Now, first off, definitely got my money's worth. It's not, if you golden path it, obviously the main story is not going to take you that long. I think I got to the main end of the main story around 42. And there was definitely a lot of side activities that not got distracted by, but kind of took my attention, and I focused on those, or some experiences that I took a little bit slower and wasn't in such a rush to get to. So if you wanted to complete it in a shorter time, you definitely could. But overall, for the game, I absolutely loved it and adored it. 2018 was such a special game in itself. Had a great story there of obviously Kratos and Atreus and their relationship, and taking Kratos' character and modifying it, or at least adapting him or showing the growth in his character from what we knew of the original PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 launches of 1, 2, and 3. I know there was Ascension and maybe one other one on the mobile platforms of like PlayStation Vita or PSP that I never played. But adapting his character and giving him some character growth to make him a more relatable character and just kind of make it more of a heartwarming journey and make a character that you wanted to root for instead of just this brute all-out rage monster that was the earlier games. While those games are still a lot of fun and very rewarding, this made it more, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, a more, I guess, emotional journey or relatable journey, and a character you could connect with compared to Kratos of old. And Ragnarok definitely delivers, I would say, on the conclusion of Kratos' and Atreus' story, and along with the characters that we met in the 2018 version and have continued in this journey as we explore Ragnarok and the events transpiring there. Gameplay, I will say, feels more of the same, which isn't a bad thing. The combat, that they developed and created for 2018 just flowed very well. Everybody fell in love with the Leviathan axe and the recall mechanic and everything there that it added to it. Adding the Blades of Chaos back into it felt, fun and familiar in what you could do with that weapon, and it just is more of the same, which once again isn't a bad thing, but it's more of a return to form that just feels like an add-on or more of this experience that we loved and cared about with the initial launch. Some things I think that Ragnarok does better than the original 2018 release. I think the side characters that they decided to add to this world and share in the experiences and story with, I think their developments in Ragnarok are amazing and way, way better than 2018's version. 2018 very much felt like a kind of a glimpse, or at least like just a plain introduction of like, this character's here, they're going to help with this. While Ragnarok really dove and delve, I felt, better into each of the characters, whether it was Brock and Sindri, whether it was Freya, and obviously the frayed relationship you had at the end of 2018 with the whole Baldur situation, and then even new characters that they did add with, obviously learning about Odin and Thor, and them being the main antagonists of this game, learning their stories and their backstories and giving them character development and emotions that you felt along the way of that journey, of that story. This one I thought did a lot better job of that. And I think that does kind of tie into the side quests. If you decide to take the time to actually do those, then you're definitely rewarded for your time in terms of story. And I think it adds to the experience overall. Whereas 2018's, they were good, but sometimes felt more just like a task instead of something that was adding to the full overall experience and the main story and plot that they were trying to tell. In terms of difficulty, how did this game compare to 2018? Now, 2018, obviously being at this point 5 years ago, there's a little bit of gap in knowledge of my full experience of 2018. Replaying the beginning of 2018, I was getting my ass whooped big time leading into Ragnarok, and I'm not sure if that was just being out of practice with the maybe not the control scheme, but for how things worked in the world and when to dodge, when to block, whatever. I was getting my ass whooped, and this game is, I will say, more difficult than 2018's, and I think it's not a detriment to the game, but this one definitely, there were points not struggling, I would say, but there was a lot of retries in this game. Now, note, and this is not meant to be like, oh, I played it this way, I'm better than everyone. No. For some reason, I decided not to use the resurrection mechanic. So in God of War 2018, you had the ability for Atreus to resurrect you with a health stone if you happen to fall and die once. They brought that back in this game. If you bought it, then you would have the ability. For some reason, I decided not to. So I never had that ability of, oh, I died, second wind, I can go after this boss monster, whatever it is. Don't ask me why. I literally have no reason. It wasn't me trying to feel like I was doing big PP energy and, oh, I can beat this game in one shot, or Bloodborne because I suck at those games. Like I literally don't know. I don't know why I didn't do it. I don't know why I decided to punish myself with it. I just did it. That's how I played it all the way through. But there was a lot of times, especially when it came to the mini bosses, that it just took a lot of attempts. It never felt like enraging. Maybe in the moment of like, oh no, I almost killed you, like that kind of thing. But it never felt like, oh, this game sucks. Like, it never reached those levels of frustration or attitude, or I can't remember. Can't think of the term. Against the game. Any malicious energy there. It was just, oh, damn, didn't do it, and immediately run it back, whatever it was that did take me down. Something that was a little bit more difficult, I will say, I think, was the parrying system. I think the parrying system they added in this game was great. The last game, Shield, didn't feel super important. You kind of relied on the dodge a lot more, whether it was dodge to the side or the dodge roll fully, if I'm being honest. This one with the parrying system, the shield became more of a thing. And I know the developers have talked about it. They wanted to add that. Mission accomplished here. I think they did it. They obviously have the attacks that you have to interrupt with the shield if you want to get a tactical advantage or stop a powerful move that your opponent is doing. However, when it comes to certain bosses and their attack patterns, sometimes parrying isn't the best option. And what I mean by that, and what can make it difficult, is because it's another layer of kind of patterns you have to learn about. And for me, that was frustrating because, okay, here comes an attack with a yellow ring. Yellow ring means, hey, you can parry this. Okay, great. I'm going to time it. I'm going to parry it. What would you think happens during that parry? Opponent will get staggered and you would take advantage, right? Sometimes, for no reason, no explanation or whatever, you would parry said move, but then opponent would still come in with another attack. And this was a hard mental block to kind of get over for myself, where I don't know if it was just because of the earlier stages of the game where parry, attack, parry, follow-up, parry, punish, whatever it is. That was ingrained in my brain, so when you do it successfully later on and the opponent is still attacking, there's a lot of hits you're just going to eat, you're going to take because for whatever reason, this person isn't thrown off their guard. And it wasn't until the very last two bosses that I kind of like finally understood, like, okay, I'm going to parry, but I need to know, here comes the second attack. Or maybe don't parry this one, parry the next one, because that's the end of their attack chain. That at points can be a little bit difficult and frustrating in compared to the first game. Granted, the first game had the same idea where there were like attack strings and attack patterns, just like any game with bosses and whatever it is, where you have to learn the things, learn the sequence, and then you can find those opportunities to attack. But with you not using the shield as much, it was more, okay, dodge 1, dodge 2, dodge 3, I can attack kind of situation. This, where they taught your brain, oh yeah, block and defend, when those later stages came, it was kind of just like, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. Like, you had to kind of reteach yourself in a way, or at least of a strategy of what to do in that situation. So at times that felt difficult. I wouldn't say it's a knock against it, but there were definitely a lot more times that I died in this game, I feel, personally, compared to my 2018 playthrough of the original. Story-wise, no spoilers still, don't worry. Story-wise, I think it was fantastic. Um, it never felt like there were portions of like a lull or a long gap. If there was side quests I was doing, granted, I could understand like that portion obviously would feel like a gap of the main storyline. I get that. But everything that was tied to the main story all made sense. All the actions the characters are going about made sense. And it never felt like a point where a la a Spider-Man of, I think also 2018, maybe it was 26, I don't know, whenever Spider-Man came out from Insomniac, a Mary Jane section where it's like, I get why this is happening, but I'm not having fun. Even when I was not playing Kratos and I was with Atreus during his sections, it still felt fun and it felt important and it felt relevant to the whole overall story that they were trying to tell. When it led to the conclusion, which once again, still no spoilers, the payoff of that story was great. Seeing the character development and the character growth from main characters to side characters to whatever it was. The payoff there was so worth it and felt emotional in the best ways. I can feel it now, which is weird thinking about it. Very, very good in terms of what they attempted to tell here and did tell here was amazing. And I think just once again what it did better than 2018's version of the side characters just getting hit from more angles other than just a Kratos and Atreus, getting hit from what's Sindri going through, what's Brock going through, what's Freya going through, what's Freyr going through, what's Tyr going through, what's Thor going through, all these different characters getting hit numerous times and getting conclusions to each and everyone's story. It felt like it meant something. It wasn't just, hurrah, our main two heroes have their thing, and then, oh yeah, everybody's just kind of along for the ride. Everyone's payoff felt maybe not good, maybe not in a positive ending, but it felt like a conclusion that had weight to it, if that makes sense. So, the last bit of my non-spoiler stuff. Do I recommend playing this game? Abso-fucking-lutely. If you play it on the PlayStation 4 platform or the PS5 platform, or eventually on PC, if and when they decide to release a port, seems like Sony's been doing that more likely. Absolutely recommend this game. Do you need to play 2018 before you play this game? Abso-fucking-lutely you do. This game is great on its own. Don't get me wrong. The story is good and you will get something out of it, but I think this is a 1-2 punch, clearly because it's a sequel. This is absolutely a 1-2 punch. You need to play both of these games to get the full experience out of. If you want that full character arc, play both of them. Please do yourself that favor. Okay. Now we are going to go into spoiler territory. So if you do not want spoilers for any aspect of God of War, now is your time to leave. I love you. Thank you for checking out this podcast. If you want to check it out, you can check it out live next week and every other week on twitch.tv/enigma9011. Follow the socials, all that jazz. I'm not going to do the full outro for just you guys. Okay, full spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Holy shit, Superman showed up in this game? No, I'm just kidding. Wow. This game made me emotional. So, a lot of people, including myself, with this being Ragnarok, being what we were shown, or seeing what we were shown at the end of 2018's version with Kratos dying, and the developers saying that this was not going to be a trilogy, this was going to be the conclusion of this story, I thought Kratos was going to die. And the fact that he did not die, and the way that they told the reason he was not going to die, was interesting. But also, like, they messed with our brains so much they knew what they were doing. They knew the groundwork they had laid ahead, obviously with the teaser of the, the whole mural of him dying. But Kratos, like throughout the journey of Ragnarok, the game itself and the story, the journey they had you, the player, and Kratos take along in the whole thing of acceptance and like seeing Kratos accepting his fate and making sure his son is ready to live beyond and past him being present was just very powerful. And when it came to those final moments leading into going into Ragnarok and going against Asgard and Odin and those guys, and leading to those final moments of what Kratos believes to be the end of his life, that those final moments with his son before they head into war, just the vulnerability they showed with Kratos, the times where multiple times in this game where they show him almost, if not on the verge of tears, showing emotions that we never thought we would expect from Kratos. Once again, from the earlier iterations of these games, just being the rage monster that only yells and Zeus, I'm going to kill you, and just rage monster everything. To see him weak and I guess maybe even times scared, just making him vulnerable, just was such a emotional experience of like, geez, we are going on a ride with this character. And obviously Atreus has his own journeys of like seeing him in 2018, seeing even his growth of that game, of not being able to hunt at the beginning to handling his own in 2018, and then in this game him being, still learning, being overconfident in his abilities, but then dealing with all this grief and guilt when eventually Brock dies because of actions that he feels he's caused, and his relationship with Sindri just blowing up and becoming nothing because of Sindri's, disdain for Kratos and Atreus, and obviously his brother's death and him just not caring at all for anything, just looking out for revenge for his brother and for himself. Seeing what Atreus goes through is like just another layer to that cake of just like you're rooting for these characters and hoping everything ends up well for them. And by the time that the story concludes and it is that more happier note of, they did succeed, they caused Ragnarok, they took down the evil forces, and then they have this moment of love and respect for each other, that they go on their own separate paths, but they're both going to be okay. Seeing Atreus at the end walk away to go, fulfill what he feels his duty to the giants and bringing them back. I cried. It sucked. I mean, it was good because obviously, he's grown up, good for him. Like all the build that they put into that, it just worked magically and it was great. And I appreciate that it works so well because even though I got spoiled on an aspect of the story, the moment in itself and the payoff of the whole story in itself still hit. It still resonated. It was about the journey. It wasn't about, I guess it was about the destination too, but the one little thing didn't ruin everything. So the spoiler I'm talking about, and I kind of alluded to it on some stream, is Tyr, who is this whole pivotal figure in the beginning of the game, because Tyr is the only person who has united the realms and is the god of war for, the Norse mythology, and he's supposed to be this driving force that Atreus wants to find and help and have assist him into creating this prophecy and making sure it comes true. You locate Tyr. He is very against war. He is a pacifist now. He doesn't want to lead that way. He wants to carve his own path. All of that I thought was brilliant, and, I thought the character was interesting. The spoiler that I got was that Tyr is not actually Tyr. Tyr is a fake. So later on in the story, Atreus works with Odin to learn more about Odin, try and gain his trust to either stop Ragnarok or at least get an advantage. We learn that Odin is trying to seek out like this all-knowing power, or at least know what is next for gods after they pass on. What is their afterlife? And he has found this mask that he believes will allow him to peer into, I don't know if it's another realm, it's some kind of tear in the world that contains this knowledge that he can sense. So Atreus helps him find the different pieces of the mask, and eventually will steal the mask from Odin in order to help, obviously, his father and their allies. Upon returning to Sindri and Brock's house with the mask, he shares what he knows with his team. Tyr says, okay, I understand. We've done everything we can beforehand. I understand now is time. I will support you in your journey. I have a way to into Asgard. And everybody's like, what? You're holding this from us. Why were you doing that? Yada, yada, yada. And he's like, I am sorry. I know I've been a burden this whole time, but at least let me help out this way. And he has the mask, and he says, okay, just let me gather my things and we'll be ready to go. Brock says, hold on a second. You don't have any things. What are you talking about? Why do you have the mask? That's the kid's. He earned it. Give it back to him. He's very judgmental and like kind of coming down onto Tyr. And Tyr stabs him and kills Brock. And turns out that Tyr was Odin. That was the big holy shit moment, right? So unfortunately I didn't get who the fake Tyr was spoiled, but I knew at some point the other shoe was going to hit here, right? I think that's the saying. So Odin stabs Brock, and Brock dies. This leads to the whole rupture of Sindri's relationship with Kratos and Atreus. He does not forgive them, has no just says they keep taking. They take everything. They endangered his home, killed his brother, just take all these materials from him, and like he's not going to help anymore. He doesn't want anything to do with them. And eventually this leads to, Kratos and Atreus getting all the realms together, slowly recruiting these different forces. So like Surtur from Muspelheim, Kratos and Atreus get him. Freya gets the maidens, aka the formal Valkyries. You have Mimir and Hills, I don't remember his name, Pigman going to the realm of the dead to get them. The elves with Freyr. Eventually, Sindri says he'll go get the dwarves. You get to Ragnarok. You see these forces come together. Big epic conclusion. The dwarves do not come. The two of the different realm towers are destroyed in Asgard, so your resources are kind of fucked up. And you eventually you get to the conclusion. You fight Odin. You win. Huzzah. It wasn't that difficult, but it was a fun fight nonetheless. And the way you defeat Odin, you defeat him in battle, and Atreus decides to trap his soul into one of the little marbles that Angerboda had given him to kind of like where the giants keep their souls, right? And Kratos gives it to Freya, says, apologizes or not apologizes, but gives her the opportunity to decide the fate, because obviously Odin has fucked up with Freya way more than those guys. You can decide his fate because we took that choice from you, life or death, last game with the whole Baldur situation. She says she can't do it, even though she thought she could when she reached this moment, gives the marble back. In the last moment, Sindri will pop in, snatches the marble, and smashes it, getting his own revenge and revenge for his brother, and then poofs away again. Sindri is absolutely like a shell of what he is. And we see this in our first interaction when we're apologizing or attempting to apologize. Sindri's always been the germaphobe and has always worn gloves and been very, not dainty, that sounds like the wrong word, but very, I don't know, particular with certain things. At this point, with him being broken, gloves are off, his arms are exposed, he's not taking care of himself. He's, mourning in his way. But he decides Odin's fate and kills him. Strong finish there. Before we get to the post-game stuff, let's talk about other side characters that they have built on. So I kind of alluded to it in the non-spoiler section. Brock and Sindri, obviously their journey, learning more and getting more connected with these characters from them just being essentially a shop in the first game. Clearly, they did a great job with them, obviously with Sindri and Brock's conclusion with Brock passing. That story felt powerful. Freya getting her revenge and then Freyr being introduced with his rebellion group, that felt good. Mimir trying to right his wrongs, or at least have us assist him in righting his wrongs, those stories paid off. We were introduced into other side characters in this game. Angerboda, I think they did an okay job with. She was interesting. She was a good, not outlet for Atreus, but like a good friend and a good resource for learning the giants and his past there. And with her returning later on, with the help of Fenrir and returning of the wolf that had passed at the beginning of the game into the giant wolf of Helheim, that was good. But a character that I really grew to really enjoy and like was Thrud. And Thrud was the daughter of Thor and Lady Sif. And she becomes friends with Atreus, and all she wants in life is to be a Valkyrie. She just wants to go be a strong warrior. Her mom's not very supportive of it, and her dad is unfortunately kind of dismissive. He's essentially under Odin's thumb and is just his lackey. And him and Sif are trying to work for the positive. They both quit drinking, but at one point Thor does go back to drinking and is kind of a piece of shit. But Thrud just wants what's best for, obviously, her family and for, to achieve this dream. And seeing her character growth and her realize that Odin is a piece of shit and try and stand up for her dad, seeing Thor get murdered by Odin in front of her and then trying to redeem him by fighting Odin, but unfortunately just getting blasted away. It's a heartbreaker. And, that was just a character we had no idea about in the first game. At least I don't think so. We were never introduced to her. She was a character that I really enjoyed her path or seeing her story unfold in this game. And, hope the best for her. Not that we're ever going to see her again, but was a character they did very, very well. And so, as I alluded to, you fight Thor before you fight Odin. Shocker. Great fight there. Another one that felt epic, very similar to the beginning fight. Not super difficult, but the growth of Thor in this game too was an interesting one. From all of, obviously, the threat of danger from the beginning of the game to his just outright hate of Atreus when you're doing these side-by-side missions with him for Odin to get the mask pieces. How he's just a begrudging, old man, I guess you could say, just hating on everything, hating on Atreus, and Atreus trying to be like this sympathetic and like resource that Thor can not be honest with, but kind of break down and realize what he's feeling or whatever, be this positive light for him. And seeing Thor's, obviously his fall with going back to the bar, trying to redeem himself for his daughter, eventually turning against Odin, but then Odin unfortunately killing him. Another good character arc there. Post-game stuff. So similar to 2018's game, there's always the side quest stuff that if you didn't go back to do, or you didn't do, you can do that now, and then there's all the collectibles and quests. If you choose to do that, you can do that as well, and they add a few missions here and there. You do get a credit roll at the end of the game when Atreus and Kratos split and they decide to go on their separate journeys. You do get the full credits roll after you do one mission, similar to 2018's, where if you did, I think it was everything, you would get the tease for Ragnarok and Thor arriving at their house. There was no tease of another thing because this was the conclusion. Even though I did everything, I made sure I checked. I went to everybody's houses. The conclusion here where you get the full credits is Brock's funeral. And this was another heartfelt moment where, like, the funeral itself was good. I think the build up to it was a little kind of lackluster. But seeing Kratos say his goodbye, and Sindri return one more time just to see his brother off for the funeral and then dissipating away, it just was like, man, you hate it. Because Sindri was such a cool character, or a good character, like just being supportive and helpful, and to see him so destroyed and hurt, like knowing they're probably not going to continue this journey unless it's maybe from an Atreus perspective in his journey to the giants. Like, that's just where we leave him, is destroyed without his brother, and it sucks. Just another emotional send-off after the conclusion with Atreus leaving. As for boss fights, there are hidden bosses that you can kind of wake up around the world with these this heirloom. You can wake up trolls, you can wake up a dragon that are like little bonus extra resources that you can get, but they're not necessary for any trophies or quests or anything like that. I did a few of those. But the main bads, similar to 2018, instead of Valkyries that you need to fight in each realm, you have berserkers that you need to fight in this game. And these berserkers, most of them have very similar attack patterns, but there's a few things that are different from one to the other, whether it's elements, like the elements that they use in their attacks, fire, thunder, bifrost, whatever it may be, or small attack differences. These were a few of the opponents that I talked to and alluded to earlier with like dying a lot that kind of happened. And that happened with the Valkyrie too. I get it. They're side bosses and they're supposed to be a little bit more difficult. I will say they are fun. The most annoying one was one berserker that had two allies with them the entire time. And it's essentially three opponents you need to defeat. And when you're trying to defeat one and then spells or blasts come from the other ones, it's just a pain in the ass. The final one, similar to the Queen of the Valkyries or whatever the fuck the last Sigrun of the last one was alluded to, or her name was, King Berserker took some time. And it's not like it took time because it was difficult. It took time just because, similar to, I guess, a Soulsborne boss, you just chip away at health, slowly but surely. One of the things, you learn the attack patterns, eventually you'll get it. I alluded to the parry system. You can parry the first one, but then they're still going to attack. A lot of the berserkers did that, but it felt like he had a lot more attacks that kind of followed a similar chain, whereas attack pattern, and you need to make sure you parry the correct one, or then be prepared to dodge. His final stage, I will say, was probably the most enraging. So Bifrost is by far the worst thing that they added to this game in terms of like a measure you need to deal with. Being on fire, sure. Being frozen from the ice, sure. The Bifrost, such a pain in the ass. You get hit with the Bifrost either by a physical move or whatever. It's on your health bar with the blue. Next attack you get hit with takes all of it away, and then a little bit. And if you get covered with the Bifrost and you're not dodging enough or allowing yourself to regain that health enough, you get slapped, you're done. And in his final stage, and I didn't realize it until my very last attempt before I beat him, but he shouts in a rage, "Rah!" And if you're in vicinity of that range, it's a Bifrost yell. And it'll just boop, 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 add. And then he emanates Bifrost from him. So most of your attacks, you need to try and stay away and do a ranged approach, because if you're too close, it's just going to keep attacking your health bar, and then that next attack, regardless of how much health you have, you're gonna die. So that was a little tough, but like I said, I finally picked up on it my last attempt, and then the next one was like, okay, I got it. All those bosses were very rewarding to finish off and beat. It's just always that sense of accomplishment. So those were good, and then we did have the one final Valkyrie fight of Gná. She was another tough one, which was just, once again, another pain in the ass of attack patterns. It's very similar to the Valkyrie fights of the previous game, so obviously having the gap of knowledge of since playing 2018 last, relearning all of those and then dealing with the new stuff and making sure, okay, dodge this one, don't parry that one, do that, do this, do that. Took some time, not impossible, but a few attempts here and there. I will say Muspelheim's challenges, which they had that last game as well. These ones are a little bit annoying. In order to unlock the last 6, they had 3 different rooms, which you would clear each room with 3 different challenges. But then for the last 6, you did 2 challenges, so 1 from each room, in different orders. So room 1 and 2 is one combination, 1 and 3 is another combination, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1. So that was a little tedious and annoying just because, like, I gotta do it again. And you could find the best or / easiest challenges to do to kind of streamline that process. But that was, I would say, maybe the only negative or annoying thing. As for side quests or endgame stuff that didn't really matter, the end of the game Ravens, if you collect all 48, you get rewarded, but then you fight their keeper, which is essentially just one of those witch things. You shoot an arrow with it, it stuns it, and you beat that up. Wasn't very rewarding. They have Asgard rifts, so Asgard blows up after Ragnarok, and then certain pieces are strewn about the other realms, which is essentially just little encampments of little enemies. You defeat them, just another checklist thing. On Niflheim's, the Asgard prison is there, and that one you can explore a little bit, but in there, you find the real Tyr. And I feel like that should have been a bigger thing, but it was just like, hey, we're here, we broke you out, holy shit, you're Tyr. And he's like, hi, I'm Tyr. Uh-oh, Odin's not going to be happy about this, Ragnarok's going to happen. And you're like, oh, well, little do you know, all that shit's taken care of. And he's like, what? Mind blown. I gotta go take all this in and think about my life. And that was it. It was just like, I get why he was there. Do we need to include this? No, we didn't. So that was a little disappointing. You can have closure with the Charlie the Turtle monster. The house that Freya lived in. You can say your goodbyes to him. Angerboda, you can talk to her and have a moment with her, which was cool. Same with Thrud. You find the Midgard kid. His name is long and starts with an S. I don't remember it. Just, you follow up with each of the characters post-game and just a little bit more additive onto their conclusion. But you see them around the realms and what they're doing. So that was kind of cool. So like seeing Thrud, when you find her, she found Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, and she now has it. And she launches away. So that was kind of cool. You get a little bit more conclusion and end cap on these characters' stories if you explore and do more of the post-game stuff. But yeah, it was just an amazing game. And, had I finished it prior to the new year, this absolutely, by far would have been game of the year. Looked great, played great, and most importantly, the story was great. I don't know if it's just me lately being, big sad boy, but the emotions hit with this one. And I think that speaks volumes, because, if a story can take you in that much and, oh crap, what's the term? Engage you enough with that, with it and what it's trying to tell you, and it allows you to have an emotional response to it, it's doing something right. So yeah, just an amazing experience overall. As of right now, they have said this is it. Like I said, I know Atreus is going to, as far as God of War lore, going off to try and save the giants or do that. If they decide to do that in a game, great. I don't know if I'm like yearning for it, because this felt like a nice wrapping up a bow on everything, even if they do allude to in the end Kratos being kind of looked at back in this god stature or form through phase prophecy. I wouldn't say no, but if this is truly the end, then this was a really good conclusion, and it felt like a conclusion. So yeah, God of War Ragnarok. Amazing experience. Had a blast with it. I'm sorry I did not continue it on stream and share that with the audience. Maybe one day we'll do a replay through of both 2018 and Ragnarok and can kind of share through that together. But yeah, if you guys played it yourselves, let me know what you thought. Comment section, messages, all that fun stuff. Love to talk more about this game and see what people's thoughts and feelings are. Looking forward to finally listening to some spoiler casts like PS Trophy Rooms with Kyle and Joe and see what their thoughts on it were. And yeah, just looking forward to more experiences like that overall. Well, everybody, this has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch this podcast live over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011 every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can join the chat over there like Papa Griff, Supermander, and Lady in Wonderland did today. We'd love to have you in on the conversation, but if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video in MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show by sharing with a friend, leaving a 5-star review, whatever you can do to help out the channel, help out the show, would mean a lot. It may seem small, but it does help us out in big ways. So we appreciate you for it. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. It was a long one. Don't expect 4 topics next week. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to have a more positive outlook on things. Hopefully bringing a positive energy to myself and to you guys as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, giving this a listen, and we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.